everybody would for sure come running if I did the triangle. Food, right? Because we all like food. All right, so we are started with Joshua chapter 22. I think if we were watching a movie, we could have ended with Joshua 21 because everybody was wonderful and happy. You know, it's like, hey, there's no more war. Everybody got their inheritance. There's rest in the land. God fulfilled his promises. You know, beautiful ending right off into the sunset. But with life, things don't just end there, right? So, we're going to keep on going. So, let's start with prayer. Heavenly Father, we praise you, and we thank you so much for your word, Lord. We praise you and thank you that you give us instructions in how we are to conduct ourselves, how we are to live our lives, and what it looks like to love you and to serve you wholeheartedly. And so, Lord, I pray this morning, Lord, that you would change our hearts and our inner being, Lord, that we would have a different perspective on what it really means to love you, to serve you, and to honor you with our whole heart, Lord. And I pray that the areas of our lives where we are not, Lord, I pray that you would just convict our hearts and help us to yield those areas of our lives over to you that we're trying to hold on to control of. And we just ask these things in your name. Amen. So, and really quick, I just have to say I'm super excited about my sweet daughter and my beautiful, beautiful grandbaby. So excited. She gets to hear me for the first time. Okay. And we're talking about love, too, so that's even better, right? Okay. So, how many of you have seen the show Everybody Loves Raymond? All right, several of you. Okay, yes. Okay, so this is one of the Christmas seasons, right? So Ray, he wants to go golfing with his friends on an outing in Myrtle Beach. And he's pretty sure that Deborah's not going to be too thrilled about that or too excited about that. So what he wants her to do is he figures, I want her to owe me. So if she owes me, then I say I want to go out golfing with my friends, she's going to be okay with that. So what he decides to do, so all she wants for Christmas is just a crock pot. That's it, right? But this is what he wants to do. He wants to give her an even bigger gift than she's giving him, so that way she's going to feel guilty that she didn't get as big a gift. And then when he's like, hey, I want to go golfing, she'll feel so guilty that she'll be okay with him going golfing with his friends. So obviously, it comes out, and she's obviously pretty hurt about this, because here's the thing. His gift that he's giving her, this bigger, grand gift, it's not really a gift at all. It's manipulation, right? It's manipulation. It's an act of manipulation. So when it comes to the Lord, right, he should have just given her a gift just out of love. Just because he loves her, that's what she wanted. And that's what the Lord does for us. He gives us good things just because he loves us, right? We get good gifts from God all the time, and there's no strings attached, right? But so for us, we shouldn't just do things for the Lord in order to receive something from him. Because when we do things for the Lord just to get something from him, it's not an act of love. We're trying to manipulate God. So in our passage today, in Joshua 22, love for God is really at the heart of these commands that Joshua is going to give to the 2.5 tribes, or they're also called the TransJordan tribes. So the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh. So remember, on the east side of the Jordan, they decided, we're going to stay and hang out here. We're good. We don't need to cross that river and go do all that other stuff over there. This land is fine for us. And then, remember, Joshua's like, well, you're going to come help your fellow brothers and sisters fight these battles for their inheritance. Then you can go back home if you want to your wives and children. So, these tribes, they were obedient to Joshua, they were obedient to God, they were loyal, they fulfilled what they were supposed to do. So Joshua is going to release them to go back home. So we're going to start reading in verse 20 in chapter 22, we're going to cover verses 1 through 9. So at that time, Joshua summoned the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh. And he said to them, "You have kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, and have obeyed my voice in all that I have commanded you. You have not forsaken your brothers these many days, down to this day, but have been careful to keep the charge of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God has given rest to your brothers, as he promised them. Therefore turn and go to your tents in the land where your possession lies, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. Only be very careful to observe the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God, and to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments, and to cling to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul." So Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. Now to the one half of the tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given a possession in Bashan, but to the other half Joshua had given a possession beside their brothers in the land west of the Jordan. And when Joshua sent them away to their homes and blessed them, he said to them, "Go back to your tents with much wealth and with very much livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, and iron, and with much clothing. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brothers." So the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh returned home, parting from the people of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilead, their own land, of which they had possessed themselves by command of the Lord through Moses. Okay, so they supported Joshua. They supported their fellow tribes by loyally fighting in Canaan's conquest. They crossed the Jordan and fought faithfully until the mission was complete. So this is 7.5 years. They fought alongside Joshua and the other tribes. And so their deployment had come to a close. They had fulfilled their commitment. And so Joshua, he calls these tribes to him together at Shiloh. Remember, we talked about Shiloh is where the tent of meeting is, where the Ark of the Covenant is. This is where the presence of God is, and this is where they assemble. So he commends their perseverance, he commends their obedience, and he sends them home with his blessing. Now this blessing that they receive, it can only be experienced by continuing to love the Lord, and to keep his commands, and to trust him, and to serve him completely. So Joshua's farewell even is very consistent with his lifetime of faithful leadership. So even though he's fought alongside these men for 7.5 to 8 years, they're probably so relieved that, war is finally over, the land's at peace, but they've been together for all these years. And I'm telling you, there is just something about when you're fighting in the trenches with people on each side of you, there is a bond in battle that you have with the people next to you that cannot be experienced by anyone else. It's just such a deep, strong bond. So Joshua, he had this bond with them. And you have to remember, he may not see some of these men he may never see again. So I can't imagine the mix of emotion. He's excited for them to go home, but he's also sad. But then he knows that they're leaving and that they're going across the Jordan, and so he's probably wondering, are they going to still, even though they're kind of on their own on the other side of the Jordan, will they still hold to the commands of God? Will they still be as faithful? Will they still come and worship with us? Or will they just say, out of sight, out of mind? Right? I mean, that's kind of what we think of God. Well, I can't see God. Out of sight, out of mind. Oh, I'm not at church on Sunday. Out of sight, out of mind. I can do whatever I want. Monday through Saturday. But here's the thing. Loyalty to God requires sacrifice. Right? Whatever the cost, to be faithful to God, to be obedient to God, it's going to cost us something. It's going to cost us our comfort. It's going to cost us convenience. It's going to cost us something. It's never easy to be obedient to God. But God will always reward faithful obedience by proving his great faithfulness through our obedience. And so here's the thing, when we choose to sacrifice in faithful obedience, we know God on a much deeper level than we have ever known before. Because we firsthand get to not just talk about his provision, not just talk about his faithfulness, but we get to actually experience it. You can't really know God unless you experience him personally. You have to experience it. And so they're going to experience his loyalty because he kept all his promises to them. He's looked all the spoil they get to take home with them with great possession. And so the beautiful thing about God is when he calls us to obey, right? We experience his loyalty. He prepares the way for us to obey. He prepares everything that we need to carry out the task that he's called us to do. And then he gives us the faith to follow him, and he enables us to stay faithful and to obey. So God, he provides the resources, and he provides the results that he knows are best for his glory. So I think that Joshua is probably going to be having a hard time of saying goodbye to his brothers. So in his mind, as he's commending them for their obedience, he's commending them for keeping their oath, and he's probably thinking, okay, if I never get to speak to them again, what do I want to leave them? What do I want them ringing in their ears as they return home? What am I going to leave them with? They obeyed Moses, they obeyed Joshua, and so this is a blessing for their unwavering obedience, is the return to their families to receive their inheritance. So Joshua in chapter 5, or in verse 5, the words that he wants them to remember are these commands. This is what he leaves them with. Only be very careful to observe the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God, and to walk in all of his ways, and to keep his commandments, and to cling to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. So the commandment and the law, it's the covenant law, it's the policies and the regulations that God has given Israel to follow, to obey. It's also the 10 Commandments, the law of God, and how they're to live and conduct themselves and to treat each other, the moral law. And so Moses, he uses these same words that they are to hold fast to the Lord God himself. The word hold fast, it literally means to cling like a belt wrapped around your waist. That's how you're to be to God. That's wholehearted devotion to God. It's clinging. It's the same word used in Genesis 2:24 describing the union of a wife and a husband. Serving God means to worship him. Worship him. And to worship him with your heart and your soul. So in other words, worship God in your inner being, inside you, not just externally, your inner being. This kind of worship indicates your authenticity for your faith in God and your passion for God. This worship of heart and soul, it means the total person. All of you. It means your inner mind, your inner desires. This is what full allegiance to God means. That's what wholehearted means. It's your desires, your mind, because when your desires and your mind are going in one direction, guess what? Your physical body's got to follow it, right? It's not like your mind and desires are clear over here, and your body's like, yeah, let me go do this over here. Because what we talked about is what you truly believe in your mind and your heart is what you're going to actually do. Right? And it's going to balance out. Okay? Here's the thing. So let's talk about love a little bit. So it's God who initiates love between him and human beings. See, Israel, they were the recipient of God's blessing and his love, not because of their numbers, not because they were such a great, wonderful nation, not because they had such great moral character, but because of God's elective love for their ancestors. It was God who chose them. Who said, I love you. And it's the same for us today. God said, I love you. I'm going to send my son to die for you. I love you. And so because it was, so the proper response to God's love, we saw it with Israel, but the proper response for us to God's love as well is covenant loyalty. Covenant loyalty. Love means the sole worship of God. And to accept God's love means to keep his commandments. And it means to love the things that God loves, such as his law and the people that are connected to God. So to love God means to love his people. So you can't sit there and say, you know what, I can't stand this person. I don't like this person. If you're in the kingdom of God and you're God's child, then what are you saying about God? You cannot love God and not love his people. You just cannot. Can't separate the two. And if you love God, that means that you love his commandments. You love his word. You love the things that God loves if you love him. So love for God, it also includes thanksgiving for his provision. Love for God means that you love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. Faith and love are intertwined because it's by faith that we respond in love to God and of believers. So the love of the Father for the Son is shared with us. And then as it's shared with us, we love one another. And that love that we show and exhibit towards each other is evidence of our love for God. So remember we talked about last week that how we treat each other is a barometer of our faith in God. How we treat people really is a reflection of our love for God. So Joshua, he exhorts the TransJordan tribes. He says, you must continue in devotion and in loyalty that you've already shown God. You've already been doing it, but now go maintain it. Go keep doing it. Don't stop. Keep doing it. Because he knows that they're not going to be physically in the presence of God because they're not there in Shiloh. But here's the thing, there's no holiday for loyalty to God. There's no holiday for being steadfast when it comes to standing for God and obedience to God. Because see, we can come in here on Sunday and it's easy to be loyal to God in here, right? With everybody that we know. But the real test of our faith is, are we loyal to God out there when we think no one's watching that we know? Right? They think, well, nobody I go to church is around me right now. Nobody's going to know if I do this. God knows. God knows. Because his presence is not just in here on Sunday with you. It's like when you even walking outside, his presence is everywhere. Right? It's like you're swimming in the ocean, there's water everywhere. You can't get away from it. That's how God's presence is. It's everywhere. So just because you can't feel it doesn't mean it's not there. He's with you. He knows. So obedience to God also requires exclusive worship of him. So when we're out there, and even when we're in here sometimes, we just like the Israelites, we're going to face a temptation of idolatry. Idolatry. That was their biggest stumble, was idolatry. Here's the thing, anything can be an idol. Anything. Think about addictions, family members, relationships, careers, jobs, food, gambling, anything. right? And any addiction is an idol, right? I saw somebody made a comment about politics being an addiction, being addicted to politics. And I thought, yeah, people have made an idol out of politics. Because think about it. So you have these people who are so addicted to politics that they are choosing their political beliefs over relationships, over people, over family members. And then I thought, I took this stuff and I was like, wait a second, is it really the politics that's an idol? Is it really the politics that they're addicted to? The reason they're cutting people off is because they disagree with them. So I think even what it really is, they're addicted to their own opinion. They have created an idol of themselves. They are their own idol. They are worshiping themselves. So anytime, you're choosing a system, a belief system, a worldly thinking over God's people, over relationships, over God, it's an idol. It is an idol. So people worship themselves. Here's the thing, God cannot be reduced to an image. We cannot reduce him to an image. See, today we have God's presence which is revealed in his word, in the scriptures. God will not accept rivals to his rightful place as sovereign ruler. Our works for God, they're imperfect. You're not going to perfectly walk out our Christian life. God knows we're imperfect. That's why he gives us grace. It's grace. So it's not about living your life perfectly every single day and never making a mistake. Because when you get so focused on never making a mistake, you're going to be miserable. And then you're focused on performing and manipulating God versus just, I'm just doing this because I love God. And if I mess it up along the way, well, you know what? God is big enough to help me through that. Because he is. You see the little cartoons with the little toddlers, right? And they're in the kitchen and they decide, I want to do something sweet for my mom. I want to make her some breakfast. And they have pancake flour and batter all over their little selves, right? And their face and everything. And you get this little mangled up little thing. Here, I made you a pancake. What are you going to do? Oh, that's not perfect. No. No. You are going to say, that is the most delicious, beautiful pancake I've seen in my life. That's what God does to us. That's his grace. He loves us. He loves us. So the overall arch of our lives, it's going to be a reflection of God's love and God's character to other people. And that is what reveals the authenticity of our faith, our passion for Christ, and our love for him, and our love for his people. When a wedding couple, when they take a marriage vow, they vow to love only each other. And it's divided loyalty that breaks that oath. And so this is why Jesus says in Matthew 6:24 that a person cannot have two masters. We're pulled in all different directions about what's important. See, for Raymond, it was going golfing. That's what was important to him. But we can see, though, that really what was important was loving his wife and giving her a gift out of love. Just doing it for love. See, we should be, I have to do this for God because, I want that gold star in heaven. Or I want God to bless me and give me A, B, and C, so I'm going to do this for God. That's not love. That's not doing it because you love God. You're trying to manipulate God. Because we know, and God even tells us what's ultimately important, is that we love the Lord our God with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our strength, and with all of our mind. And if we truly love him that way, then all of the actions and what we do for him and how we treat other people, it's going to fall into place. Because when our relationship with God is right, our relationship with others will be right. And you know, if we're honest, we get easily distracted from the ultimate priority by the issues in life that call for our attention and our time. We do. We really do. That's like the song, prone to wander. Our hearts are prone to wander. Lord, I feel it. You know, it's almost like we need God to take our hearts and bind our hearts to his altar. So every time we try to get off and get distracted, we can't move. Like, okay. Okay, that's not what's important. Right? We do have to remember, though, that our service for God it needs to be an act of love. An act of love and devotion. Not manipulation. Not manipulation. And so I love this, how loving that, Joshua sends the tribes off with all these spoils, right? Their tribesmen, they didn't go, oh, wait a second. Oh, no. Why should we share? That was on our land. We shouldn't have to share that. But you know what? They exhibited unity and love for their brothers and sisters. They exhibited that love. And so today, as we think about loving God, maybe there's areas of our life that we think are super important. But maybe God is like, oh, you're not loving me in this area of your life. You're not loving me wholeheartedly. Or maybe there's something that you're thinking, I'm going to do this so God will do that for me. But instead, just, you know what, God, I love you and I'm just going to do it for you because you're so good to me. How can I not? Dear Heavenly Father, we are so thankful that we have no excuse to not love you the way that you love us. Lord, we have so many examples in your word. Like you laid out so clearly what you desire for us, and Lord, it's so simple just to love you. But Lord, you know for us that it's not easy. It's not easy. And so we're so humbled by your grace that even though we do make mistakes, we mess it up, and you know that in your grace, you're so patient with us, Lord. Lord, I pray that as we leave here today, Lord, that we would keep in the forefront of our minds with all that we do and every action that we do, that we would ensure in our hearts that it's what is loyal to you, that it's an act that is offered to you as an act of worship and devotion and out of love for you, Lord. And Lord, I confess that even in my own life, there are things that I do and to try to manipulate you to get things. And so, Lord, I just pray that you would just have us have the right motives in our hearts, Lord, that we would love you with heart, mind, soul, and strength. And that we would just walk in the freedom of knowing that it doesn't have to be perfect, that you love us and you have grace. And we are so thankful to you for your love. And I pray for the rest of our time together. I pray for our worship, Lord. I pray that we would truly worship you with our entire inner person, our entire inner being, Lord, that we cannot contain our love for you and our worship for you this morning. And I pray as Brother Terry brings us the word about your vision for our church, Lord, I pray that every single person here would just desire to jump on board wholeheartedly and to walk out, handing out the gospel, that we would desire that the rest of our year be given in honor and in glory to you. And we just ask these things in your name. Amen.